Okay, I have a question or a point. I always assumed that someday with experience I'd be able to just hit the right note right away. And this is one of my students having said this not too long ago. And it led to any number of other, or it was coming out of any number of other points being made in front of that person's canvas. And I want to talk about that today, but it's going to lead us into some interesting territory. The idea of a note, hitting the note perfectly and adjusting notes and all sorts of stuff. But and the crucial nature of that and certain aspects of things related to it. And it might be that you've heard it all before, but I wonder if you've heard it precisely in this context. And I want to just leave you before I go into the thank yous for donations for this week. I want to just repeat a discussion I had with Mr. Gamble, and that is in a day when he asked, or when he said to me, I don't teach, I inculcate. Do you know what that means? And I said, I certainly don't know what you mean by that. And he said, it means I repeat it until you can't think any other way. I could say that I just repeat it because it's a thing for you to know. And a lot of the things you, as it were, inculcate, they are in aphorism form or axiomatic form. And you need to hear them over and over to understand they're important, and then you need to try to work them out. But let me thank you. Let me thank you to Jacqueline M., John J., Ben C., and Jimmy C. for your faithful and ongoing support. It's been crucial for us making it in the last bunch of years. So thankful. And keep it coming. And anyone else who's inclined to make a donation, it's a big help to anybody who's receiving a benefit. And to yourself as a thank you, maybe. Anyway, I don't want to lean on that. I'm sounding like a circuit riding preacher or something. Forgive me. All right, but let's repeat that. That I always assumed that someday, with experience, I'd be able to just hit the right note right away. It's fascinating, fascinating idea. It leads into so many things. And I'm going to show you pictures, a couple pictures just associated with this. But it's one of the things that this comes in connection with, though, is the sight size experience. And perhaps in the belief in sight size that there is I can make this that, I can make this that. Millais seems to have had the idea. I'm about to quote Millais, John Collier rather, talking about Millais. He seems to have an idea that there's a better thing than standing back and doing what Morgan and I'll call sight size. By the way, I'm not changing my mind about sight size the way I've talked about it with you before. Remember, I've quoted to you before that Degas' comment that what's wrong with this guy? He has his student painting side by side with the object he's painting. Doesn't he know? He says, doesn't he know it's an art of relations? So you know that I've said that, and then I described to you the problem you have with sight size, and that is that people tend to, if they're, in fact, Gemmell said to me, match this note, as if it could be matched, that every note implying that every note through the whole canvas could simply be matched one to one. Through the whole painting, like Call Me the Painting, every note on here could be matched in nature one to one, and all the relationships would somehow be right. I'm saying it's implied. He said other things that took away that implication, and so who knows how much of that's a young student mishearing. But the tendency I've found with students, when you give them canvases side by side of what they're painting, they might get a set of relationships right, but then they will start screwing them up by trying to make them match each one of the different 3 or 4 colors, match other colors. So you know I've said all that stuff. I'm quoting John Collier now. He said, I've already mentioned the method pursued by Sir John Millais, that of putting the canvas side by side with the subject and walking backwards and forwards between each touch. That's what we do. I do that. I'm a sight-size painter in that way. every touch that is given by this method has to be applied by memory and not by direct observation, for the painter can only see his object properly when he's away from the canvas. So, and that very last part of that is the part I want to talk to you about. First of all, we can say for a minute that it's presumed that there's a memory aspect to this thing. That even if you're working side by side, and John Collier implies there's something good about it, I think it's him who says you're not really making it the same. It implies that unless you're doing it like this, you're talking Sargent, you're talking to so many other people, you'll never hear a description of them doing like this while they're watching the model, as if you were transferring data. But I'm not doing all this to pick on that. I want to get to this point here. And he says, so for the painter can only see his object properly when he's away from the canvas. Now, this quote, by the way, comes from a really nice little document you may want to dig up. I suspect it's online. Someone named Nicholas Beer has done an essay called the Sight-Size Portrait Edition, and it's basically just a whole body of maybe 20 different quotes of different people who work this way, including the Sargent one that I've offered you from Rothenstein, or Charteris, I forget who else. So if you think that I don't use sight-size, you'd be wrong. But if you believe I use the sight-size method that you hear described by people, and that was taught to me actually in the Gamel classroom, which is you line these things up perfectly, and then you just transfer data across. You transfer data. I wouldn't be caught dead doing that. So some people teach that. I'm saying today's modern sight-size method I do not use, but I do put my canvas on the side by side. I'm disciplined enough not to think that I'm matching colors. I spend all my time learning the set of relationships. Now this is where memory kicks in. Learning the set of relationships, and then watching to see that is reappearing on the canvas over here. Okay, so when this young man says, I always assumed that someday with experience I'd be able to hit the right note right away. You know what I'm going to say to him. I'm going to say, you're not going to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to put down a note, and you're going to adjust that note. But what I noticed that this student wasn't doing was he wasn't systematically and repeatedly debriefing the canvas. In other words, you can think you have a note, learn this note, and go put it on your canvas, and then go find another note and learn and get on your canvas, and don't ever watch what your canvas is up to. So there's going to be this moment every time you put a note down there, it's going to be just wrong, because it is. Okay, but it's no different than writers saying writing is adjusting. So if you can get that into your mind, though, that note is going to be wrong, but if you just get into your mind the idea that we're then going to correct that note, how are we going to correct that note? And Gamel was fond of not wanting us to use the word correct, make it more like, all that sort of stuff. The Bonnat rule, making it like as you can and make it more like, does imply simply adjustment. So you're going to put a note up there as like as you can. So that applies to line, it applies to colors, it applies to everything. Make the note as like as you can. But you have to go back, and this is that crucial thing that appears this student possibly was failing at, is that consistently debriefing, looking at the canvas, looking at the whole unity of the impression of the canvas, and seeing if it matches the general unity here. I don't care if it's 2 notes, and I've talked about this recently, or 5 notes, or how many notes, but all the notes taken together that you put down need to maintain a unity. They're truthful, they're right relationships. And you won't be doing that by matching a single note and making a single note right. So there's no point to even have the discussion about the right note. Even though our guide says, put down, what does it say? Just the right value, the right note, and the right color in the right place. It's true, except the rightness is adjustment. It's created by adjustment. So the first note you put down, as I've always said, is going to be the pig in the poke. So the first thing you have to do is, as soon as you put a note down, you have to believe that it's going to need adjustment just to be like the note you were trying to, just to be like the idea you had about it. Well, adjust it a few times until you can see that, yes, I believe that's what I meant to put down. So that's that first part. You've got to put the time in there just reviewing that note. But the second part of it, and the crucial part of it, is that you then look at it in the context of the unity. If you've seen your note in nature and you've seen it in a context, you'll have a better idea about it than if you just simply look at it as a single thing. Say it's a red note. If you look at two or three other reds, or it wouldn't matter what it was, you'll get an idea about this note, and you can only put down one note at a time. So you're going to carry that note over here, you're going to put it down, and then you're going to review it, okay? You're going to, first of all, put it down and see if it's what you meant to put down, not go back and start checking out the world again, but just see if it's what you meant to put down. And then you're going to see, and then you're going to look at the context and see if it's what you meant to put, if the context is maintaining. And at that point, you're going to do what Max Meldrum recommends, and that is you're going to see if they would, as it were, if they're mergeable, if it looks like they are of a piece, they both have the same unity. And that's not a sight-size color unity. It's a relational unity that is very, very fun, because you don't have to be, if you write in relation, it will do the same thing as if it were literally the same in value, which a lot of times in nature it can't be. So I'm saying something I've said before. I'm leaning in on it, as you can see. Let's see if I've forgotten to mention anything. Yes, there's one thing I do, and I've said to also recently, I've certainly said it to my intensive guys, and that is, what you have to be doing is just continuously watching your canvas. Don't look at nature, think there's this right note, and put it over here and hope. Just watch your canvas. See what it's delivering. Watch it. And you'll immediately know what to do. And that adjusting is what you have to be ready for. That's why I say keep your knees bent. The note you put down isn't meaningful. It's a takeoff point, right? What did Archimedes say? If I had a place to plant my foot, I could move the earth. Well, you have a place to plant your foot. That first note you put down, that attempt, right? And so, but then the rest of it is, make adjustments. Make adjustments. Now you have a place, say whatever that was, you should say, should it be more red, more yellow, more blue? The concept, now just remember the concept of the color I had. Should it be more red, more yellow, and blue? Did I actually hit it with that note? You see what I mean? And then make adjustments. Should be more chromatic, should be darker or lighter. When you think you have that note, then again, take in the field, okay? But it's all, just keep watching the canvas. Put down notes and watch the canvas. Put down notes and watch the canvas, okay? But again, it goes all the way back to this whole thing about, do you have the big picture in your mind? Do you have an idea of the thing fixed in your mind and eye, the big general impression, so that as you're getting these notes down, as they start forming this thing up, you'll start seeing your world. Okay, so that's an important thing, that what I call that recognizing it. You'll recognize it when you see it. So put down notes. So if you have a set of notes that you're trying to put down, or you know that you're after several notes and you're trying to get what they do together, all those things are in that same class. Preconceive them, as Yang says. Learn them, get them into your memory, fixed in your mind, fixed in your, what did he say, mind and eye, and then put them down until they're doing that same thing. And then you can check in that sight-sizey way and see how you're doing. You should be fine in that situation. Don't underestimate the importance of memory, though. And the idea of walking back and forward is a really good thing because it trains memory. But you're going to walk back, Sargent says, draw the longest line you can remember. Yeah? You think it's going to be right on the money? It's not. You have to know where it's starting, where it's going to end. So you're going to have some idea. He talks about that, having some idea of the angle that line is sitting at, okay? And you're going to have some idea where it's going to start and where it's going to end, both in relation to its angle, but where its location on the page and all that sort of stuff. But it's always going to need adjustments, right? It's not about this one line and, I failed. And that's a big deal. Get over the idea that you failed. You set something in motion that you can build on. So you made a statement, and you're going to adjust it until it's got something meaningful, something that actually is what you meant to say. Yeah. I'm not sure there's anything else I can add. I'm glancing at some notes here. It's a big deal though that you keep thinking about don't be worried about being wrong. Going back to the statement that our students have made, I always assumed that someday, with experience, I'd be able to just hit the right note right away. You will do that. You'll hit the right note better as you get more and more mature. You'll hit notes that barely need adjusting. But the game is to adjust. The game is you always want to be looking at it in multiple contexts and finding that little adjustment, that little adjustment. So it's no different from writing a sentence in the middle of a paragraph and being aware of the whole context of the whole paragraph and making adjustments to the sentence based on what's happening in the rest of the picture. It's no different from that. Or even just a sentence, you write down a sentence and you see there's a little grammatical problem with it. It's not unusual. So immediately you're ready to adjust in that situation, right? So don't be worried about, I didn't write the perfect. It's almost like a person who has a mindset of writing a novel, and you write the first sentence and then the second and the third, and someday you're going to be able to never have to go back and adjust anything. That's not your mindset. That's an a-human experience. We don't have that. So everything you put down is the equivalent of a pig in a poke. It's a first shot at something. It's a first experience. And now what you got to be skillful at, and it does require, is making the adjustment. And that does require a certain kind of a mood. Like I said, a knees bent mood, a willingness mood, not proprietary about the first note you put down or proud of it or any of those things. It's just getting the ball moving, getting it moving, getting it moving. I'm not a singer, but the little teeny expeditions I've into it, I begin to realize that there's something you have to do. You have to hear your voice to adjust to the note. Now, sometimes you can hear it in a person who's singing that they get to the note quickly, but they didn't start on the note. So typically, if I do any singing at all, I'll try to hear my own voice, just the sound of my own voice. And then I'll hear a couple notes and I'll be able to see, so to speak, I'll see what I've got, right? But you'll immediately, if you call it consciously or unconsciously, you'll make adjustments. And it's no different from that. What you, yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah. And it's nice the way in music, in singing, that you can, if you stay tuned to what you're hearing, in our world, it's staying tuned to what you're seeing. What you're seeing, right? And that's why the canvas is so important, that when you get it up there, be aware, be aware, be aware. Don't be defensive, don't be worried, right? Just be aware of the field. Be aware of the general unity, be aware of the note you're putting down and its relationships, and make the adjustments, and when it's in some adequate zone, and make sure you don't think it's going to be final even then. Because you may be, in the early part of the painting, there'll be more information coming. That's why you really have to keep your knees bent again, because there may be more adjustment, even to your most precious areas. And that doesn't defy the idea of anchoring. We're still anchoring. We're still saying, this is our darkest dark and our lightest light, and and this is going to be the top, and that's going to be the bottom. But things happen. And you don't take an attitude. You just simply, you suddenly wake up to the fact that it's not going to work quite that way. Sometimes you have to backpedal a bit and rethink, as they say. But adjusting. So if you can do it without an attitude, and if you can do it without that built-in idea that, I don't draw well yet, I don't draw right yet. There's no right. What there really is there's a methodology that takes you for what you're worth in your first mark, and knows how, that part of you, that more adult part of you, that knows how to take that and build on it and make adjustments until it's beautiful. I remember Gamble said that once. We would have a tendency to just knock off pictures, drawings, for example. And Gamble said, I want you to take every drawing you make, I want you to take it all the way to the end. That's the plan. And he was trying to keep us away from this idea. Now, by the way, the idea of just throwing things off and not working them through. And if you have the idea of working it through, then you're in tune with what I'm saying. So that's why it's so important to not just do starts and stabs at pictures. Set up a still life that you rather like, and put the time in and try to get it. It's going to require all the things I talk about, all and more. But but minimally, it's going to take the idea that you're going to put notes down. You're going to have to adjust them. You're going to have to watch them to the whole field, and and over time, the whole field is just slightly mobile, right? So yeah, so in the meantime, you are definitely saying, having anchors, you're saying, let this be. You have certain kinds of things. You're going to say, I'm going to make this my darkest light, and that's my lightest light. And I'm going to live right here for now. I'm going to try to make that work. I'm going to see if that'll work. See if that'll work. That's a search. That's that hunt mentality again. And again, so much of what we're talking about here, the right and wrong thing, it just doesn't feed into it. I always assume that someday I'd be able to hit just the right note right away. I don't even think it's a thing, because the music that happens in painting is a relational thing. And for you to hit the right note implies a sight-size mindset. Are we matching notes? Or are we actually learning the composition? Are we learning the interplay of notes that makes for the music or the beauty of that day? You with me on this? All right. To appreciate that discussion this past week, Mr. Anand, that was very good. There are a couple of you in the room, and I didn't want to put this out without, I was trying to ask you to use your permission for your name, and I didn't want to do it without your permission, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should have talked about. I think that covers it. I don't want to get back into the sight-size thing. You understand that I actually do paint in a sight-size location. If I've often said to you that sight-size is merely a place on the floor. It's where whatever is the size of the image you're making appears to be the same size. If you're doing a portrait of me and the size of my hand, this isn't, or say this big, you can see that this thing, to match that, my hand is going to come up here somewhere and somewhere up in here. This length is going to be, well, my drawing should be here if I'm trying to make a drawing this size to appear to be the same as this, right? You see what I mean? That's all sight size means. But if you're doing a life size one, you'll tend to have the painting will be right by the model. And most paintings historically, most portraits historically are life size. That's say most of the commercial stuff that you see, Sargent's work and so on, mostly is typical. Again, I do want to remind you to have a good look at the sight size conversation. I think it's a good one, and I'm not that guy who's the enemy of sight size in the way of being a place on the floor. I've said to you numerous times, that's its basic value, and even in one of those quotes, it shares. I forget, Speed or one of those guys. He says, you don't have to work in sight size, but you should take advantage of it by putting your drawing back into sight size. If you're not working sight size, put it there side by side with the model, or when it appears to be the same size as the model, and you might see errors in your work. So, again, the temptation to make it, try to match this and match that and match that, the sizes, the proportions, anything. That's not the world we're in. That's the world of relationships that we're trying to live with when we do that. So don't be saying this color should be that, match that. It doesn't work that way. And again, the search, this marvelous search is going to open up your eyes to the glory of God's creation. I mean, when you start seeing what makes colors dance in relation to each other, you'll never go back to thinking drawing is everything. Okay? All right. I'm out of here. I hope that comes across and isn't way too redundant for folks. Do get back to me, anybody with comments that might be useful. I've said to you before, and I'll say it again, if you have something you want to discuss, so we could even turn it into a Zoom, please be in touch. But because I do find it, I'm staring at a camera here. Oh, I didn't even look at pictures with you, and I meant to. Actually, you better let me do that. How much time have I put in already? Let's look at these pictures with just these. I'll review the ideas. I'm so sorry I did that. but having nobody in front of me, I feel sometimes I'm just, you don't know where I am. I love it to get feedback from time to time. Somebody said, "Did you mean that?" You know, and or how about if we try it like this? I'm good for that conversation. It really, really enlivens the conversation and gets us more to the point, doesn't it? But let's just look at it with a little brief bit of stuff context-wise. So, Tarbell may very well have sat out here, put whatever canvas this is side by side with the model so it appeared sight size. No big deal. That's not any kind of an issue. But what he did after that was he found out what his lightest light was and his darkest dark, and he hit these notes the best he could, and he adjusted. One of the beauties of the Impressionist model is that, you're going to get this, put this note down here, this dark. You're going to say, that's probably my darkest dark. That area is. And if you don't like how dark it is, the next stroke you can make can lighten it up, and it doesn't have to be stirred into a smoothness. But the next note can adjust it, okay? So it's nice you can just put down another stroke and leave it and make the adjustment to the next stroke. It's so implied in the Impressionist model that the adjustment is in the next mark, not in erasing. I don't like the eraser mentality. So, but in the conversation did he come out there and hit the right note? If you've been out painting landscapes in the sun on a particular hillside over and over again, you're going to tend to know what kinds of colors are likely there on a given day at a given time of day and all that sort of stuff. The Monet world is full of that, yet they're never all quite the same, right? Because he's got that openness to whatever precisely is happening today and how different. It's not about how different it is. It's just about what it's doing in the context of what it's got around it today. So, but yeah, did he hit that hand note right there, right off? I doubt it. But as I said, Impressionism allows you the moment to adjust it. If you look at the Nude by Paxton, or if you look at the arm on the decamp, the blue cup, you'll see. By the way, you'll see that they appear to be almost painted by the same hand, and it is true that Paxton learned the color application to drawing from decamp. I mean, that's been in the documents for a while, Joseph decamp. But you can see that all of it is notes plus notes, notes plus notes, and it's the building up and the searching out. So you may be putting down a blue over here and then find out there's more red in certain parts of it, or even that the whole thing is more pinks or whatever. Can you see that there's no note? We're not going to find some perfect note here, but what we're doing is we're getting enough information down here and enough here and enough here and enough down here and over here and up here to know pretty soon, before you know it, while you're watching the great impression, to begin to know when you're in the range, when you're in the ballpark, when this is going to work, right? But it does require an openness to do it with color. It requires an openness, an open-mindedness, and an openness of drawing. So the drawing stays, in the Boston School way, it stays quite limited. It's not the hand we're drawing, it's something about the hand. It'll be some key aspect of the hand that sets up the major effect and isolates that dark value in the middle of this area. It's surely going to be those sorts of things, but not the drawing in any little way, in the same way we thought of, remember when we were listening to what flat means to Benson. So this whole thing, this is actually flat. It's a dress with a lot of busyness on it. Well, he's just painting as if it was a dress with a lot of, but he's not counting and making every little piece of all these things. If he wants to, that'll come, and he will do it in visual order. So, but hopefully you can see that this isn't about being correct. This is about being adjustable, okay? So keep remembering that. We're not about hitting the note. It's about adjusting the note. And even in line, and this is a Benson, even in line, you'll see this has got a combination of mass and line. But even here, you'll see that he might put a value down here. He might have to adjust it 2 or 3 times. It'll be harder for you to pick up on. But that edge there might have been sharp all the way down, and he realized he had to knock off, he had to soften that little bit of it right down there. It's that kind of a mentality. You know, he may have he may have only seen the softness of that thing when he finally got this neck, or whenever some other part showed up, or when he finally did the softness of this, and he saw that it was similar enough to that, and he saw that they were in the same ballpark. He thought, what am I doing making this sharp edge over here when it actually looks like this one? But that's the context mentality that makes for the adjustments. Do you realize that? The context makes for the adjustments. You could turn that into an axiom. I've never have. So every single edge you put down, every single curve you put down has context. And your first idea, all you can hold in your brain is what this is doing in a line. But the next thing you're going to adjust it to is how it reads into this curve over here. Something like that. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's the adjustment model. So I said notes, and I could have, but I didn't mean to leave it at that. It applies to drawing, it applies to shapes, it applies to proportions. He may have set up this whole mass here and had the hair mask too big for the face, that sort of thing. You're going to have to adjust, that's all. But you do have to be tuned to the majors when you're in the earlier phases of painting. Your goal is to get the major, and you have to learn to do that a little bit by blurring your eyes and by just thinking bigger thoughts. This is a bigger shape than this right here, right? This is a major in that way, right? So there are what people talk about the great lines. You can talk about a great line, this thing here being going all the way through here. There's a kind of a beauty and unity to that together, so to speak, or even to this one picking off over here, or to anything it happens to run with. But there are great lines and there are minor, less secondary lines, right? And all you're adjusting really wants to be, you're making little things. You should be making, if you're making them as part of something big, you'll be doing something good. But immediately remember that every time you make a bump on this face, there is an adjustment that has to go on for two reasons. One is to get this big thing to do what it does together, and the other one is to get this individual thing to be operating in the right way. But adjustment just goes with the territory. It's who we are, right? I like that writing is rewriting. I think it fits perfectly into what we find. Yeah. I wonder if I left anything out based on what I was just telling you. The first time example would be the first time he drew this. It'd be like the first time that Tarbell hit that note. Some note, say, right in through here, first time. It's just the first time. But once he got other data, then he's going to adjust it again. It's exactly the same thing with the drawings. You're going to throw this line the first time, but you're going to improve it dramatically once you know more about something over here or something, et cetera, somewhere else. Keep watching for the beauty. That's why I said the big deal is the way this plays, the way numbers of things play to each other. This is the game. It's not the accuracy. That's why sight size is so problematic. I don't care about this and this and this. I care about this. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to be willing to adjust, and then willing to adjust to the greater, to the more important things? Do you understand that? But I'm starting to add to this now, and I don't want to do that. All right, guys, that was fun for me. I hope that helps. I do know that every time you guys send donations, that does help. Jacqueline M, John J, looking forward to seeing you one of these days soon, John. Ben C and Jimmy C, guys, so much appreciated. I'd love to see any one of you guys, if you ever get a chance to be in our area. I'd love to have a visit up in our little northern New Hampshire where nobody comes. This is why we're here, We're almost on the Canadian border up here. All right. So again, thank you all for comments, sharing, liking, subscribing, and getting your friends to. We had a good jump in subscriptions last week, and I'd love it if you could be helpful in getting that done again. And then any amount of support you can get, we are making it. One of these days we get our subscription levels up enough, I guess it'll be much less of a burden. I think they're the ad stuff that you do pick up when you pick up my videos. But it seems to be quite paltry. I don't hear many good, much good information coming from Mr. Producer, and how great the funds are that are coming from that. All right, I'm wondering. Hope you guys all have a great week painting, and see you in the next one.